Hello friends of the channel, this is a story where the survivors of a plane crash find themselves in a hostile land in Africa. At an unexpected moment, they discover a cave that contains a considerable treasure. The problem begins when fights and disagreements arise over how to divide the treasure and get out of the desert. The Cave of the Forgotten Kings. The scream of jet engines failing at 30,000 feet is a sound that haunts the marrow of the bone long after the silence of the desert floor takes over. The flight was a private charter, a shortcut across the Namibian wilderness that ended in a symphony of tearing aluminum and shattering glass. When the dust finally settled over the scorched red earth of the Skeleton Coast, only 5 souls crawled from the smoking carcass of the fuselage. Colt, a former search and rescue operative with shoulders like granite and eyes that had seen too many tragedies. Sloan, a high-stakes corporate litigator used to crushing opponents in glass boardrooms. Maverick, a restless freelance photographer who lived for the adrenaline of the shot. Sierra, a brilliant structural engineer. And Brooks, a trust funder whose only previous struggle had been choosing which yacht to sail. The African sun was a physical blow, a hammer of white heat that turned the sand into a furnace. Colt immediately took command, his voice cutting through the whimpering and the smell of jet fuel. They had no radio, no GPS, and only 3 liters of water between them. The first day was a brutal march through a landscape that looked like the surface of Mars. But the desert wasn't empty as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. The first roar echoed across the dunes. It wasn't the majestic sound of a nature documentary. It was a guttural, terrifying vibration that signaled they were no longer at the top of the food chain. A pride of desert-adapted lions, gaunt and lethal, had caught their scent. That first night was a blur of terror. Colt organized a perimeter using jagged shards of the plane's wing. They fought back with fire and desperation, Maverick using his high-intensity camera flashes to temporarily blind the beasts while Colt swung a makeshift spear. They survived the night, but the hunger and the soul-crushing thirst began to erode their civility. By the 3rd day, Brooks was hallucinating, and Sloan was already calculating the legal liability of the crash. It was Sierra who found the miracle. While tracking a faint scent of moisture near a canyon wall, she discovered a narrow fissure hidden behind a screen of withered acacia trees. They squeezed through, hoping for a damp rock to lick, but instead, they fell into a dream. The cave opened into a massive, cool, subterranean vault. As Maverick clicked on his tactical flashlight, the darkness didn't just retreat. It exploded into 1,000 points of refracted light. They weren't looking at water, they were looking at a king's ransom. Piles of uncut diamonds, heavy bars of gold stamped with colonial seals from the 1920s, and crates of ancient ivory artifacts lay scattered across the cave floor like discarded toys. It was a lost shipment, a ghost of history sitting in the dark. For a moment, the thirst was forgotten. The exhaustion vanished. "This is billions," Brooks whispered, his voice cracking. "My family's estate. This makes it look like a lemonade stand." The shift in the room was instantaneous. The we that had survived the lions evaporated, replaced by 5 eyes. Sloan was the first to sharpen the blade of discord. She pointed out that under maritime and salvage law, the distribution should be based on contribution to recovery. "I'm the one who found the cave," Sierra snapped, her exhaustion turning into a fierce, protective anger. "Without me, you'd all be sun-bleached bones by noon, and without me," Colt countered, his voice low and dangerous, "the lions would have had you for an appetizer 3 nights ago. We stay focused. We take what we can carry. We find water and we move." But Maverick wasn't listening. He was already filling his camera bag with diamonds, his eyes glazed with a feverish light. The intrigue began in the shadows of the cave. That night, while the others slept, Brooks approached Sloan. He whispered about a private extraction team he could call if they could just get to a high enough ridge with his hidden satellite phone, a phone he hadn't told the others he had. He offered her a double share if she helped him neutralize the others. The betrayal came with the dawn. Colt woke to find the satellite phone missing from Brooks's pocket, stolen by Maverick, who had vanished into the canyon. But Maverick didn't get far. A scream ripped through the morning air. The lions had returned, and Maverick, weighed down by 30 pounds of gold and diamonds, was too slow. The group watched in horror from the cave entrance as the desert reclaimed its toll. With Maverick gone, the remaining 4 were trapped. The Pride was camped outside the only exit, sensing the weakness in the human pack. Inside, the drama escalated into a psychological war. Sloan, fearing Colt's physical dominance, tried to convince Sierra that Colt planned to leave them behind once the rescue arrived. Paranoia became more dehydrating than the sun. In a desperate bid for control, Brooks tried to barricade the inner chamber of the cave, claiming the gold for himself. A frantic struggle broke out. Sierra, the engineer, saw the structural instability of the cave. The ancient limestone was failing under the stress of their fighting. "Stop," she screamed, but it was too late. Brooks swung a heavy gold bar at Colt, missed, and struck a key supporting pillar. The sound of the cave groaning was like a living thing. Dust rained down. The unexpected twist came not from the treasure but from the ground itself. The floor of the cave began to sink, revealing that the treasure was sitting on a thin crust over an underground river, the very water they had been dying for. But as the water surged up, it began to wash the diamonds and gold into a dark, bottomless abyss. Save the stones, Brooks shrieked, diving into the rising, turbulent water. He was swept away into the dark, his hand still clutching a crate of ivory that acted like an anchor, pulling him down into the depths of the earth. Colt grabbed Sloane and Sierra, dragging them toward the narrowing exit as the cave began to implode. They burst out into the blinding light of the desert just as the entrance collapsed into a mountain of rubble. The treasure, the greed, and the betrayals were buried under 1,000,000 tons of African rock. They stood in the sand, gasping, their clothes torn and their hands empty. The lions, spooked by the vibration of the collapse, had retreated into the distance. Colt looked at the two women. There was no more talk of shares or law. Sloane reached into her pocket and pulled out a single, small, uncut diamond she had tucked away earlier. She looked at it, then looked at the vast, uncaring desert. With a bitter laugh, she tossed the stone into the sand. "It's just a rock," she said. They began to walk, not as heirs or lawyers or heroes, but as survivors. They eventually found a nomadic camp 3 days later, battered but alive. They never spoke of the cave to the authorities. To the world, they were just the lucky ones who survived a crash. But in the quiet hours of the night, they each remembered the golden glow of the cave and the high price of a treasure that no one was meant to keep.